You thought her smile meant acceptance. You thought her silence meant peace. But every time you bent your will to earn her validation, you gave away the only thing she was ever testing: your power. Men believe they win by pleasing, but every gesture of need, every frantic attempt to be understood is like blood in the water. It tells her and the world that you can be moved. And once you can be moved, you can be owned. Machiavelli warned us that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not fear as cruelty, but fear as respect. The unshakable strength of a man who refuses to beg. Yet modern men have forgotten this. They chase approval like peasants begging for coins, not realizing that the more they give, the less they are worth. And the tragedy is that they call this love. But it isn't love. It's the slow suicide of their own soul. Machiavelli once wrote, "He who becomes master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it, may expect to be destroyed by it." Replace the city with a woman's will, and you will see the bitter truth most men ignore. A man who seeks to rule through kindness, through endless gifts of validation, through a posture of submission, will not only fail to gain her respect, he will be devoured by her quiet contempt. Because in the court of attraction, love without respect is nothing but captivity disguised as romance. Machiavelli understood the nature of power better than any man of his time. He did not believe in the illusions of affection, in the false security of being liked. He believed in presence, in authority, in the unshaken hand that holds the line even when the crowd demands it be lowered. A prince, he said, must appear to be all mercy, all faith, all honesty. But never forget that true power rests in what you can withhold, not in what you give. Apply this to your own life. Every time you text first, every time you beg for answers, every time you offer your soul like a merchant selling cheap wares, you surrender the throne of your masculinity. And the woman, consciously or not, senses this. She does not crave the man who bends. She craves the man who does not fold, even under the weight of her storms. This is the warning Machiavelli would give you. Stop believing that affection is gained through service. Stop thinking that the man who gives the most wins. A man who cannot walk away, who cannot endure her silence without breaking, who cannot hold his own gravity, will be ruled, not by her love, but by his own fear of losing it. Reinty. You've been told a lie since the day you first felt the warmth of a girl's smile. They told you that women love you for who you are, that your kindness, your loyalty, and your sacrifices will earn their hearts. But the brutal truth is this: they don't love you. They love the image of you, the story they can tell themselves about you. And the moment you stop living up to that story, you are no longer a man in her eyes. You are just another background character, disposable, forgettable. Men cling to the illusion that giving everything secures loyalty. But in reality, the more you give, the more she wonders why it was so easy to take. When you chase her validation, you are not showing strength. You are showing that her opinion of you holds more weight than your own. That is not love. That is worship. And worship is the fastest way to make her see you as weak. She doesn't want the man who grovels at her feet. She doesn't want the man who waits by the phone, praying for a text. She doesn't want the man who thinks flowers and compliments will keep her interest. Why? Because those men are predictable. And the feminine instinct is not drawn to predictability. It is drawn to tension. To the man who could walk away at any moment. To the man who does not flinch under silence. You believe her affection is a reward for good behavior. It isn't. It's a reflection of her respect for your presence. And presence cannot be earned through constant validation. It is built through stillness, through a refusal to be swayed by her moods or manipulations. Look at the men she chases. The ones who don't give her constant attention, the ones who don't bend at every demand. Do you think they win because they are cruel? No. They win because they understand the first rule Machiavelli taught. Power is never given. It is only taken by those who can hold it. Every time you chase validation, you hand over the keys to your soul. You teach her that your worth is negotiable, that your identity bends around her gaze, and once she senses that, the game is over. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because you've already stripped yourself of everything that could have earned her respect. The first illusion you must shatter is this. Love is not about being chosen. It is about being unshakable. Stop asking if you're good enough for her. Start asking if she is worthy of your time, your energy, your mission. Because the man who puts a woman above his purpose is not a man. He is a servant, begging for scraps of validation while his soul quietly starves. He thought he had it all figured out. He believed love was something you could earn, like a medal, by proving your devotion. So he worked harder than any man should. He built a life around her, not for himself, not for his mission, but for her approval. Every decision he made was filtered through the thought, will she like this? He bought the house. She decorated it. He paid the bills. She packed and left. And when she walked out the door, she didn't just take her clothes and her perfume. She took the version of him that existed only through her gaze. He stood in the empty kitchen one evening, staring at the coffee mug she left behind, realizing that the man he thought he was, the provider, the lover, the protector, was gone. Because he was never real. He was a mask built for her comfort. The story begins like it always does. She was drawn to his ambition, his energy, his unshakable drive, but slowly, he stopped being that man. He started to orbit her moods, her needs, her whims. Every time she pulled away, he chased. Every time she grew silent, he explained. Every time she tested his resolve, he bent, thinking that compromise would buy back her affection. But compromise became collapse. One night he came home early from work, ready to surprise her with dinner. He found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her eyes colder than he'd ever seen. No fight, no yelling, just a flat voice. I don't feel the same anymore. His heart sank, not just because she was leaving, but because deep down he had seen it coming. He had felt it in the way her eyes stopped lingering, the way her laughter sounded like courtesy, not joy. He begged. He promised to change, to be better, to give more. But that was the problem. The more he gave, the less she wanted. Because every plea, every desperate word, only confirmed what she already sensed, that she had become his purpose, his oxygen, his God. And no woman can respect a man who kneels before her as if she is his reason to exist. Weeks later, as he sat alone in that same house, he began to see the truth. She didn't betray him. She simply stopped believing in the man he had become. He had traded his fire for approval, his mission for comfort, his sovereignty for love that was never real. And the bitterest part? He realized he didn't lose her. He lost himself long before she walked away. This is the story of countless men. Men who confuse devotion with dependency. Men who trade their power for validation. And until you see this pattern, until you break it, you will keep living the same story, bleeding out your worth to women who cannot save you. A woman is not the storm you imagine. She is the wind before the storm, unseen, but capable of shaking every tree that isn't rooted. She doesn't need to strike you directly. She doesn't need to scream or demand. She only needs to test the air, to lean on the cracks in your foundation, to see if you stand or if you sway. And most men, blinded by the hunger for her approval, sway like reeds in the wind. Understand this. Her nature is not malicious. It is instinctive. The feminine tests, not because it hates strength, but because it hungers for it. Like the tide pressing against the rocks, she wants to feel that you are unmovable, that your world does not crumble with her silence. When you chase, when you panic, when you break your own rules to win her back, you are telling her, without words, that your center is not your own. And once she senses that, the gravity is gone. She is not the storm. She is the wind that calls the storm. If you are solid, she flows around you. If you are weak, she carves into you like water over stone, eroding the man you once were until nothing remains but the shell that orbits her moods. Think of fire. A woman does not want to hold the flame. She wants to feel its heat. But if you hand her the torch, if you give her control of the fire that once made you untouchable, the flame goes out. And in the absence of that fire, she sees not a man but a boy pretending at strength, waiting for her approval to reignite him. This is why the men who keep their power are not the ones who run after her. They are the ones who remain still, like mountains in the distance. She can approach, she can test, she can even try to climb, but the mountain never kneels. It doesn't crumble just to make her ascent easier. It exists, whole with or without her. The brutal truth is this: women do not love the man who bleeds for their validation. They are drawn to the man who bleeds for his mission. The man who stands firm even when she threatens to leave, even when she pulls away, even when her silence cuts deeper than any blade. She is not there to rescue you from your emptiness. She is there to measure the strength of the man who has already filled his own. Stop imagining her as an angel who will heal you. She is not your savior. She is the mirror that reflects the cracks in your armor, the cracks you refuse to face. Her nature will press against your weakness until you either break or rise. Which will you choose? You want to blame her, don't you? You want to call her manipulative, cold, ungrateful. But the truth is far more brutal. She didn't betray you. You betrayed yourself. You walked into the trap with open arms. You volunteered your power, your time, your mission, and handed it to her like a desperate offering. And when she accepted it, when she tested it, when she found it weak, you called her cruel. But who taught her that your spine could bend so easily? You did. Machiavelli warned, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Apply this to your own life. What kind of man were you when she met you? Were you leading yourself, or were you just waiting for someone to crown you? Did you have a mission bigger than her, or did she become your mission the moment she smiled? If you built your identity around her gaze, is it any wonder that she walked away once the image cracked? Stop thinking she took your power. She didn't have to. You gave it away every time you chased validation, every time you folded under silence, every time you mistook her approval for your worth. Women don't rob men of their strength. They simply reveal which men never had any to begin with. You confuse her nature with malice. But she didn't seduce you. You seduced yourself with the fantasy of who you thought she was. You projected your need for redemption onto her. You made her the answer to the questions you were too afraid to face. Who am I without her? What is my worth when I stand alone? This is the harsh awakening. You were never a victim. You were a volunteer. You let her moods dictate your value. You let her absence define your peace. You let her validation become the prize you fought for, while neglecting the war you were supposed to fight. The war within yourself. Do you know why she pulled away? Because she saw you had nothing left that was yours. A man without boundaries is not a man. He is a tool, a resource, a servant dressed in smiles. And a woman cannot love what she does not respect. She doesn't respect the man who kneels at every emotional whim, who breaks his own principles just to keep her attention. She may tolerate him, but she will never crave him. This isn't about her. It's about you. You are not in chains because of what she did. You are in chains because you placed her above your own purpose. You gave up the mountain to live in the valley of her approval. And until you reclaim yourself, you will keep bleeding out your power to any woman who knows, consciously or not, how to test it. A man who cannot walk away is a man who cannot lead. He is chained not by her, but by his own fear of losing what he believes he cannot live without. This is the root of all weakness, the belief that she is the source of your worth. The moment you need her approval to feel like a man, you are no longer a man in her eyes. You are a follower, orbiting the gravitational pull of her moods, her silence, her temporary affections. Machiavelli would call this fatal. He warned that a prince who is not feared will be despised. Translate that into the language of modern relationships. A man who is not respected will be discarded, not because she hates you, but because you gave her no reason to see you as anything other than a malleable servant. Walking away is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the refusal to let your life hinge on the shifting winds of someone else's emotions. The man who can walk away holds all the power, because he does not depend on her reaction to define him. His silence is not empty. It is the silence of a king who knows his throne does not sit in her living room, but inside his own mind. You want to know why some men become unforgettable? Why even years after leaving, they still linger in a woman's memory like an echo she cannot silence? It is not because they gave her everything. It is because they gave her nothing she could control. They didn't beg. They didn't explain. They didn't crumble when she pulled away. They walked. And that act, that quiet refusal to be owned, burns deeper than any romantic gesture ever could. The man who walks away says without words, "I am whole with or without you. I choose you, but I don't need you." And that, paradoxically, is the only kind of man a woman cannot fully replace. You do not win her heart by clinging. You win her respect by being willing to lose her rather than lose yourself. Think of this like war, because love, when chased blindly, becomes exactly that. If you show your enemy that you fear losing, you have already lost. A woman will test your boundaries to see if you can stand without her applause. The weak man compromises, apologizes, and erases himself to keep her close. The strong man sets his standard, and if she cannot meet it, he walks away. Not with anger, but with dignity. The power of walking away isn't about making her chase you. It's about proving to yourself that you are sovereign, that your value is not up for negotiation, that no validation is worth the price of your own soul. Once you master this, something strange happens. You no longer fear rejection because you are not seeking acceptance from anyone but yourself. And that, ironically, is when respect and desire begin to flow toward you like gravity. There comes a moment when a man must decide if his life will be defined by pursuit or by purpose. Too many men choose the first path, chasing women, validation, and temporary warmth, only to wake one day and realize they've built nothing of their own. The mountain of their mission stands untouched, while they waste years circling the valleys of approval. The solo path is not loneliness. It is liberation. It is the quiet realization that you were not made to orbit anyone's desires, but to rise, to carve your name into the world, to forge something eternal. Machiavelli would call this power. Nietzsche would call it will. Marcus Aurelius would call it alignment with nature. All of them would tell you the same thing. You were not born to beg. You were born to build. When you walk alone, you begin to see the truth of things. You see how much of your life was spent performing for women, performing for acceptance, performing for applause. But the mountain does not care about applause. It stands regardless of who is watching. And that is what you must become. A man who builds, who suffers, who climbs, not for approval, but because it is his nature to ascend. Every great man has faced this choice. Napoleon, with an empire in his hands, still wrote desperate letters to Josephine, and he suffered for it. His greatness came not from love, but from conquest. He learned too late that no woman's affection could match the fire of his mission. The same is true for you. Love is fleeting. Purpose is permanent. When you stop chasing validation, you discover a deeper strength. A silence that cannot be shaken by her withdrawal, a vision that does not dim when she leaves. You no longer need her to see you, because you have become the kind of man who sees himself clearly. You know your path, you know your worth, and no storm, no rejection, no betrayal can strip that from you. The mountain is your proving ground. Every step you take in solitude sharpens your will, hardens your resolve, and burns away the weakness that once made you chase. You stop looking for someone to save you because you no longer need saving. And paradoxically, this is when women, and the world, begin to see you differently. Not as a boy desperate for affection, but as a man who walks with purpose. Do you understand now? The solo path isn't punishment. It is the forge where real masculinity is built. You weren't made to orbit her. You were made to rise. You didn't lose her. You lost the version of yourself that depended on her gaze to feel alive. And that loss, though it burns, is the greatest gift you will ever receive. Because it forces you to see the brutal truth. No woman, no love, no validation will ever complete you. Completion is a man's work, forged in silence, built in pain, tempered in solitude. Machiavelli warned that the promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. She promised to love the man who led himself, the man who stood firm. But when you began to kneel, when you sought her validation instead of commanding your own life, you broke the silent contract of strength. She didn't abandon you. She simply stopped following a man who had stopped leading himself. So, what is left? You. Your mission. Your spine. The fire that cannot be extinguished by rejection or loneliness. You were never supposed to save her. You were supposed to save yourself. The man who learns to walk away, to stand alone, to build without applause, becomes untouchable. And when you become untouchable, the world, and yes, even women, respect you not because you beg, but because you don't need them to. Walk away. Reclaim your throne. The world bows to the man who refuses to kneel.